Hi guys, welcome to this conversation between me and my co-photographer and YouTuber Nigel Danson. In this video we sit down to discuss various subjects that we find interesting within photography. This new conversation format is new to my channel. It's not going to be a substitute for my other regular videos that come out on Tuesdays, and they're definitely not going to be something that happens on a weekly counter, maybe once a month every third week or so. Now I already have a list of photographers that I want to have a conversation with, but the most important thing for me is that it's actually an interesting conversation so that we add a lot of value to what we are talking about. We're talking about our different approaches to photography, but also our more philosophical thoughts about it, like what we are thinking about it and how we approach not just a subject but also nature. There is of course a learning curve to this format too for me, so I hope you will bear with me here in the beginning where I might do a lot of beginner mistakes. In this conversation we will come by topics such as our work ethic, what actually makes for a good photograph, our emotional connection to it, and in the more broad sense. We will also talk about how we approach nature and which one of our photographs that we actually end up liking the most in the long run. We will talk about gear, how we approach gear, and what kind of gear actually helps us to produce the photographs that we like. And in the end we will have a little bit of a talk about how we approach YouTube, our experience with YouTube, and our thoughts about, clickbaity titles and so forth. I would really like to know if you enjoy this format. It is supposed to be more of a conversation like in a podcast, but I will add a few pictures in the video when we talk about those pictures. So grab a cup of coffee and maybe sit and edit some photos while we have our conversation. And yeah, so hello Nigel, how are you?
Hi. Yeah, I'm good. It's a lot of time inside at the moment, which obviously is difficult for everybody, but I'm getting lots of things done, which I've not been doing for a while, so that's good, but I'm sure in a few weeks it'll get difficult.
Yeah. Well, it's the same here in Denmark. We're not in a complete total lockdown as it seems you are more in England.
Yeah, it's tough,
we are allowed to go out and of course, always keep in mind social distancing, wash your hands, don't touch surfaces that might be contaminated. But yeah, even our nature department of the ministry is go out into nature, go out into the forest if you really want to go out. So yeah.
Well, that's good. You're lucky. I mean, the good thing from it is that I'm getting 2 videos out a week now. So that's. But people are going to get sick of seeing me inside, and before too long I'll be doing macro photography. So.
Yeah. Well, it's the same for me. I also have quite a lot of time. I have a lot of projects I'm working on, but so far it seems I can keep up with the schedule of getting 2 releases a week. So yeah, it's all good. So this is the first time I'm actually trying this format of an interview or a conversation. So I'm looking very much forward to it, and I'm super happy that you wanted to participate in it.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be good fun.
Yeah. So I've come up with a few different questions, which is hopefully a little bit more deep than the regular, a little bit superficial photography questions. I want to dive a little bit deeper into it, more philosophical stuff. And so, well, the first is probably not super philosophical, but it's mostly how do you actually manage to get everything done? Because you are working so much. What sacrifices do you have to do in regard to maybe to family or stuff?
I mean, it's difficult because ever since I started becoming a professional photographer, it always, and it still does, feel a little bit like a dream. I'm still just living my hobby really. But then there are certain constraints on my time. So, I don't employ anybody. So everything I've got to do on my own time. And I suppose I learned a long time ago when I set up my first software company that you've got to be really careful with your time. And so everything that I do, every bit of, every 5-minute chunk of time that I use has got to have some sort of return on investment for me. So that might be, the return on investment doesn't have to necessarily be monetary, but it's got to have something that's going to improve maybe my well-being, or improve my photography or my videography or my skills in editing, or actually going towards a project like when I did the Mastering the Art of Landscape Photography course last year, putting effort into something that I can then sell and actually make money from photography, which without being able to do that, then obviously I wouldn't be able to do it as a career. So I think that time management, although I'm quite busy and I never do all the things that I want to do, it's a question of writing them down and then just deciding on which will have the most return on investment. Investment being, in my well-being or my knowledge or my, monetary investment as well. So, and then the other thing is that I always try and innovate. So I always try and spend, and I usually do it on a Monday. So I usually publish my video on Sunday. So Monday, I don't really want to do anything that is monotonous or I've done before. So I try to use Monday as an innovate day. So I try and come up with new ideas and try new projects, do a lot of things that probably end up failing. And I don't see them as a waste of time. They're just things that I think, I've tried it, see what happens, and then I do something else. So that's sort of the things that I do to try and manage my time. It doesn't always work like that though.
No, yeah, because for me, at least what I can feel is like I have so much time actually. And now that I'm not like preparing for workshops, anything like that at this time of year, and Sophie, my girlfriend, she's writing her PhD, so she's like working from she wakes up until like she goes to bed. So I'm basically on my own all the time, and I am not really that structured. I kind of know what I'm going towards and what kind of projects I'm working on, but I kind of more I'm a leaf in the wind. I just do whatever I want to do, and at some point I'm probably getting everything done. But I don't have a family, I don't have a car. My expenses for living in this apartment is like, I don't know, €1,000 a month that I share with Sophie. So it's not really super expensive for me. I don't have a lot of sacrifices to do, so I'm pretty free when it comes to these to this lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean that's really good, isn't it? And it seems that though there's a lot of, certainly us YouTubers, where there's not that many with kids. I suppose I'm lucky in that my kids are growing up now, so not growing up, but they're older. 11, 14, and nearly 16. So they take a lot less of my time now. But obviously I take them to school quite a bit, and I do have to restrict my travel based on that as well, because I want to see my family, and my wife works, so it's difficult. I can't really travel all the time, which would be the ideal thing. Although I do travel quite a lot, especially in the winter time, and I'm getting to a period now which luckily, I suppose for me, it doesn't involve a lot of travel. I've cancelled a few trips to Patagonia, and we had to cancel a workshop in the Faroe Islands. But yeah, I mean, I have to be careful about that travel, I suppose, and balance that with other things. But I do a little bit of what you are saying as well, where you just do the thing that you enjoy the most, and I think that's important, because I think you've got to enjoy things, and you've got to, sometimes going from one thing to the other is good. But I also want to feel like I've achieved something when I look back on my month and think, what are the things that I've done in that last month that have that time has been useful, really. So I think I'm fairly good at that.
Yeah, awesome. So let's move on to a bit more like photography related. In regard to your photography, when you look through your portfolio and those things, do you see like some kind of like overarching goal for your photography? Is there like maybe a recurring theme, or are you working towards something? Do you want to make like, you know, fairy tale photos, or is there anything like specific that makes a Nigel Danson photo?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky, really. I mean, I think I've changed a little bit over the years. I do get influenced by certain photographers. I think your photography has influenced me a little bit. You know, and then there's other photographers, like, I suppose from a woodland photography point of view, people like Colin Bell, who's a UK woodland photographer, has influenced me quite a lot. And then Mark Littlejohn, who's a photographer that people might have heard of, has influenced me quite a lot in terms of how I edit some of my photos.
Yeah,
But
those woodland photographers from the UK, I'm following a lot of them. Oh my, they're so good.
They're
Good.
amazing, aren't they?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
we seem to have a good number of. I mean, we have a lot of nice woodland in the UK, so that's good, and we have a lot of fog, which helps. But yeah, I mean, I suppose I've only really got into woodland photography in the last couple of years. I know you're really, you know, it's a new thing for you, isn't it? And,
Yeah.
you know, you're producing some amazing woodland photos.
Thank you.
I still feel like I can improve a lot there. But in terms of my style, I suppose what I'd say is it's painterly vistas, really. So I quite like sort of not too in-your-face dramatic shots, but more painterly, but big grand vistas, and hence why my book is called Vistas, because I feel that that's what my photography is mostly about. And I've visited a lot of places recently, in, you know, that are big vistas. You know, you look at places like Lofoten and the Faroe Islands and Iceland and Scotland. You know, they're all places where it's just all about big vista photography, really. So I've shot a lot of wide angle big vista shots. And I probably want to change that a little bit, but I still enjoy it so much. So that's always my, you know, what I go out for. Really, my ultimate goal is to get more big vistas, really, and chase that light.
Yeah. I can, because you have been photographing for a great many years, all the way back on analog cameras and so forth. But
Yeah.
I'm quite actually new to it. I only am like 9 years or so, something like
Sure.
that. And it's only for the past 5 years that I've really been like landscape photography, maybe only 4 years actually.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy making and photographing those very powerful photos, very wide angle and so forth, very like, you know, in your face, as a sucker punch in your face. It draws a lot of attention. But it's funny because when I look at the photos that last the longest, that I'm most excited about the longest, it's the more calm and simple photos. And it sounds like such a cliche, but it really is like that. I enjoy photographing the dramatic stuff, but I don't really hang it on my walls. It's more the more calm and atmospheric, and as you say, like the more painterly, less cinematic and dramatic, but more painterly, something that makes you dream away without like dragging you through the frame.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that's why some of my favourite photos are from the Lake District, because I think the landscape's a little bit softer there. It's not that the Faroe Islands doesn't excite me, and you know, some of my best shots are from there. But I think there's a difference between what people would perceive my best shots to be and what have an emotional connection to me. And I suppose the Lake District ones tend to have more of an emotional connection. And certainly some of my woodland shots now as well. I think, you know, they're starting to be some of my favourites. I feel like I'm getting a bit better at that, and I think it's a very difficult skill to learn, and I think in any type of photography you're learning all the time, aren't you? You know, our styles change as we go on, and I don't think you ever get to a point where you're the perfect photographer. Nobody would say that.
No,
but,
probably not.
No, but I'm definitely better now than I was 2 years ago in my woodland photography. In terms of my photography as a whole, though, I've always shot landscapes. So right from the very beginning, you know, I remember my first trip to Yosemite was just with black and white film, and I was so excited because I'd read all the Ansel Adams books, and I was just so excited about seeing these these images in black and white, and then going with some Ilford black and white film and waiting to get home and develop them all, and thinking, oh my God, I'm going to have, do I send them through the X-ray? Do I not? And all those traumatic things of before you get them. And I developed my own film as well, so that's really scary. Yeah, I mean, I've always done landscapes, and I've done a little bit of portrait photography, obviously, of my kids, and definitely done a lot of pet photography now, mostly out of focus shots of pebbles. But I like those things. I really enjoy them, but I feel like I can only be good at one thing, really. So I've mainly stuck to landscapes.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned pebbles, because you have this photo of pebbles sitting on a road within like a forest.
Yeah,
and you have like
yeah.
the light coming down, and it's just such a good photo. And how did you shoot that on your phone, or how was it?
No, I did shoot that on my camera. Actually,
Okay.
I have got exactly almost the same shot on my phone, because I tend to shoot shots on my phone and then on my camera. But it's really interesting, that photo, because that I'm just finishing off before my book goes to print, just the final bits of it. And that image I was just looking at this morning, because it's going to go in the very back of my book. It's probably one of my favourite photos I've taken, landscapes and other photos. And I think it was really interesting, because it was a really good example of how light makes such a big difference, because it was just, it doesn't look really foggy in the shot, but it was just foggy enough, and I was at the edge of the forest where the light was just starting to come through. So the light was just, it wasn't, you can't tell it's bright light, but it's just starting to come through and give that sort of glow to everything. And that's what gives it that really sort of painterly look, really. And okay, I've edited it a little bit, but you have to start with something good, don't you? And it was, yeah, I mean, that photo is just, everything about it just worked. And it's really interesting, because on Instagram, that's my most liked and most viewed photo I've ever posted.
Yeah. It's funny, we're kind of like transitioning now over to the next part I wanted to talk about, which is what makes a great photograph, or what do you think is a great photograph? Because I definitely see like a huge difference between what is popular on Instagram and the photos I prefer. As I just talked about, that my photos that I like to hang on my wall, besides them being a little bit more muted and not so dramatic, for me, they also have this, I have like a relation to them, a special relation to them. So one of my photos is from Death Valley in California, of course, from me and Sophie's tour to the US. So I have those memories attached to that photo, and next to it I have a photo in the same color tones, but very different, from the Faroe Islands, but also very minimalist, also from me and Sophie's tour. And then I have my newer woodland photos, which for me was just such a mind-blowing thing, that I could get photos in Denmark that I am really, really excited about, and I really, really like. And of course, they don't have big mountains in the background, because we don't have that. They're just from within a beach forest, which to me is just like the most normal and boring forest you possibly can find, because I've literally grown up and lived in an area of Denmark where we have those forests all over the place. Like, gone out to them when I was in school and studying as a teacher, and we were out like doing sports, and that's just such a regular forest for me. And I can still get a photo that I, with my experience at least, can consider a photo which is really, really good and deserves to be on the wall.
Yeah.
So it was that thing with what makes a great photo for you. Besides, you know.
Yeah, I think I think the most important thing in a good photo is probably one, that you like it, not anybody else. I think that's very, very important. And I know people like, hence why people post on Instagram, like to get sort of third-party recognition, and you know, just it's good to get that. But I think if you don't like it, it's not a good photo, no matter what anybody else says. And then I think the most important is it has some sort of an emotional connection. So either, and it has to have an emotional connection with you for you to like it. But I think if you look at it and you think, oh, that transforms you to the place where you took it, or you start to have an emotional feeling about it, then I think that's important. You know, certainly, and that might just be excitement. It might be when you look at it, you go, oh, I'm excited every time I look at that. Or you might think, you know, oh, that just makes me feel calm. And, you know, I suspect your woodland ones are probably a combination of both, because you're excited that you could get shots really close, and you're thinking, well, I really like that. It's soft, calm, just relaxing images, usually woodland photos. So I think that's really important. I think a lot of people pay too much attention on technical details with photos, and don't get me wrong, that's right. But if you think about a piece of music, if all the notes are played perfectly in a piece of music, it doesn't make a great piece of music. It's how those notes are combined.
I love that analogy. It's so perfect. It
Yeah.
really describes it perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think people get really carried away with, you know, and I think I do as well, because, you know, I'll go on YouTube and think about how I get my focusing right on my videos and stuff like that. And you want to get that right. Don't get me wrong. You can't have an out of focus landscape. It's going to look really crap. But people get over carried away with it, I think, and it's the same with rules. You know, you need rules, but you need to break them as well. So I think it's good to have some rules, and certainly if you're a beginner, then it's good to be able to follow some rules, because that helps you build those compositions up. But then I don't think you should be afraid to break them either, because sometimes the best photos are the ones that break the rules.
Yeah, absolutely. And even when I'm out in field, I can really be there so much and work on a specific composition, and I have this vision in my head. Yeah. Yet the photo that I prefer the best was the one I like literally shot over the shoulder just because I passed by it, and it suddenly something just happened in front of me. And on one hand, it's so annoying that, yeah, you have learned composition, you have learned to use light, you have learned all these things, but you still have to rely on luck. And special conditions and weather conditions that
you definitely do.
You can't really predict them. Of course, you can watch your weather forecast, but there's still like that luck thing. But I guess it's also good, because else we would all just like always go for fog conditions, and we would never go for other kind of conditions where we didn't assume that there wasn't a good photo.
No, so, exactly.
Yeah. All right. So I also got to think about, like, we talked about this emotional connection to the photo. That on one hand, it's nice for me to have an emotional connection to the given photo. But then when we start talking about photography competitions and making sure that other people enjoy our work, because let's be honest, we are also in a business, and we also earn money from selling photos. So
exactly, yeah.
we either need to make sure that our feeling of getting that specific photo is transferred through the photo to the other viewer, or we should probably be able to more objectively determine whether or not, when we are curating all our photos, if this is a photo that is worth finalizing, editing all the way through, that other people can enjoy, and not just me, because I have an emotional connection to it.
No, I think that's right, and I think there's, like you say, there's two things there, isn't there? If you're entering competitions, then you know it actually in that case it probably doesn't matter what you think, and then if you're selling your print, again, it doesn't matter what you think. Although, having said that, if you don't like it, you shouldn't be entering it or trying to sell it. But I think if I look at, I mean, I sell my prints, and I've done that for years. It's not just recently as I became a professional photographer, because I used to sell my prints and give the money to charity. Before I became a professional photographer, I've had exhibitions, I've done other books, like I've just got a book here that I've got, which you know, I printed, and so I've always been really heavily involved in printing and selling my photos. Obviously, I'm more successful at it now, and I think that I'm more successful about it because I've got a wider audience, not because I'm a better photographer so much. But I think it's really interesting when you look at what people buy, and and what people don't buy. And there is a difference then, because I think what you've got to imagine is that somebody's going to put that on their wall, and that's where big, grand, epic shots are maybe not the best thing, because you've got to think, how's that photo going to fill that space? And you've got to try and put yourself in the mindset of somebody buying your photo and thinking, well, if they're going to put it on the wall, every time they see that, what are they going to get out of it? Is it going to make them feel relaxed? You know, because they're probably not going to get a photo that's quite too dramatic and makes them feel tense every time they look at it. So there's all sorts of things that I always think about when I'm trying to decide what photos I put on my portfolio for people to buy from a prints perspective. And sometimes some of my photos, which I feel like my best photos, don't actually become prints for sale, because I just think I know from history that they just won't sell. Having said all that, then sometimes a photo that I don't think will sell, I put it on, does really well. What's really interesting is that a photo, well, I'll probably send it so you can put it up, which is A Land That Time Forgot, which is a shot that I took with you, actually, which we've spoken about before. And it was a last minute thing that, you know, the light came at the end, and you know, we'd been there a long time, and I ended up getting a nice shot. I don't think it's the best ever shot I've seen of that location, but to me it meant a lot, and it's a nicely toned image, and it's almost like a duo tones to it. But that has sold better than any of my other photos, and so there's something in that image that people connect with, and people think, I want to hang that on my wall. And then also a lot of my woodland photos do really well as well, because I think it's peaceful. I think people associate, and everyone has a woodland, don't they? So most people don't have the pharaohs in the back garden, but everybody probably can go to a woodland and walk around a woodland, and probably has emotions that they associate with walking around woodlands as well.
Yeah,
so I think that's important.
Yeah, it is about like that connection again, like to have a connection to the specific place. And that's also what I've learned, like talked about in one of the videos I think I made back in December, that if I want to sell prints for people in Denmark, then probably photos from Iceland is not going to sell very well. It has to be something from Denmark. So
that's right. And then the other thing with selling photos is the actual locality, isn't it? Or if people are going on holiday there. I mean, it was interesting. When I lived in San Francisco, I took a photo of the bay with people's houses and the fog rolling in, and nobody outside of San Francisco would buy that. But I ended up selling quite a lot of that photo to people that lived in the bay by just advertising it on Facebook and just saying, just advertise it to these people on Facebook. And it worked really well, and I sold about 30 copies of it before I had a YouTube channel.
Yeah, so. Wow, that's quite impressive. All right, so let's move a little bit more onto something which I'm curious about. It's more the individual photographers' approach to editing. What are their limits, like, you know, because I have more or less no limits whatsoever when it comes to like sky replacements and editing. Like I do whatever I want, and I often feel when I post a composite on Instagram that a lot of people are like, people know that I do composite photography, and I'm completely open about it, and I really do not want to lie about it, and I don't want to deceive people, because lying is wrong. You don't have to disclose that you are doing composite photography unless I think there's some like law-wise case for it. But that being said, where do you stand in all those things? Like, how liberal are you in regard to your photos? Can you distort it out of shape, or do you just have some kind of limits?
Yeah, I'm probably not as far as you. Well, I'm definitely not, am I? I mean, I you know, we spoke about this before and said, I like, it's not that I dislike photos that are composites. I mean, it's interesting. James, a friend of mine as well, does a lot of really obvious edits on some photos that are more comical, I suppose, and I suppose they're more obvious that they're edits. But I think it's a piece of art. So first of all, photography is an art, so anything goes. I don't have any problems with what anybody does. For me, I want to record the scene as I saw it. So for me, photography has always been going and recording that scene as I saw it. However, there's going to be times when I might combine two photos together because the wave on one photo was better and the sky on the other photo was better. But I'd always probably have a time limit on that of maybe an hour or something. It's going to be taken in the same session that I was there. So there was, again, in the Faroe Islands when I was with you, we were running a workshop, and there was a photo I took where the sky was amazing at one point, but the waves were changing. It was really big waves, and we're just waiting for the right waves to come in, and I didn't get the sky and the waves together, so I combined two images together. And I don't think I actually said that to anybody, so I just published that and didn't mention it.
Yeah, that's more like time blending.
It's more time. Yeah, it is. It's
which seems to be
blending.
More accepted. It's funny with these completely arbitrary rules for what's allowed.
Exactly, it is arbitrary, isn't it? But I suppose from my point of view, what I see is if it's taken in the same session, or if it's possible, then that's probably okay.
For me, it is very important when you do composite photography that you can't see that it's an edit. Like sometimes it's more obvious than other times, like you have artifacts and you have halos around edges and you don't match tones and colors. And then it obviously looks like a composite. The American commercial photographer Joel Grimes, he makes these very out of this world portrait commercials, sports commercial photography, and as he says, like you have to sell the fake, and even though it is a fake in that regard because it didn't happen to you, to me it's not so much about documenting how the world is. For me, it really is just my art, my expression, how I want it to be, and I think the clash between within the landscape photography community in regard to the arbitrary limits of editing happens where we all have maybe different expectations and different limits to a landscape photograph. Sure. That some people want to document the landscape, whereas that's completely not something I want to do for the most part. Sometimes I do, other times I don't. As I said, I'm pretty liberal and I'm pretty broad when it comes to what I do with my photos.
Yeah, but I suppose that's also massively in your favour in that one, you create what you love, which is important, but two, you've become extremely good at Photoshop, and that then when you're producing images that are real, that have happened, that the landscape community will accept, then you've got those extra skills, haven't you? Because you've done some really complicated things, and I feel that I want to try that, and I want to do more stuff like that because I want to do more time blending stuff because I think I really like that. But it's just that I always find that I'm fairly good at Photoshop, but I need to up my skill just to the next level, really. I think. And I think it's a good skill to have, isn't it, for landscape photography? Because because quite often when you've got an image, there's bits of other images that you think that'll make it better, and it doesn't have to look unreal, does it? Or like it might not have happened. It can just make a better image.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's move on because we have been talking for so long for now. So what's your relation to gear? Are you a techie guy who just loves having as much gear as possible? Like if you could go out into the field with a Red Epic camera and use it to film your vlogs, would you do it? Or is there some kind of weight limit and practical stuff that comes in for you also? And maybe also fuse that question in regard to how are your concerns in regard to YouTube with production value versus actually just getting the job done.
Yeah, I think I'm going to contradict myself so many times here because people think that I'm not into gear because I don't talk about it a huge amount on my channel, because I actually don't think for the majority of people it makes a huge amount of difference what gear they've got. You know, the most important thing is going out. Well, first of all, is getting out as many times as you can, and then it's, you know, being out at the right time, and then it's understanding composition and the rules of photography. So all those things are miles more important than gear. Having said all that, I love gear. So I really, really like getting a new camera. When I got, you know, this camera here, my D7, then I was super excited. I couldn't wait to use it. But then I now accept that that's not going to make a big difference to my photography. However, having said that, there are things that do make a difference, and I think when I am making educated purchases rather than purchases just from the heart, so when I'm using my brain, there's two things that I always think about, and this is probably born out of YouTube rather than photography, and that is that because it matters more about what I carry then, and I suppose what I've got to think is what I'm carrying in my bag. If I'm going to take more gear, or if I'm going to invest a lot of money in new gear, is it going to make a measurable improvement to my videos or a measurable improvement to my photography? And then the second thing, is it going to make my process easier? And if it hasn't, if it takes either one of those, then it's probably worth me investing in something. So if it makes it easier for me to make a video, or quicker, so for instance, I've got a mic on at the moment, it's wirelessly being transmitted to my camera, and so all my video and my audio go into one file and I don't have to sync them afterwards. That has helped, but there was an investment in the wireless mic. You know, when I bought this, it's got a higher megapixel count, and you could argue that helped, but it didn't, I don't think, give a measurable improvement to most people looking at my photos. If I print something out like this image here, that's absolutely huge, then yeah, that's a measurable improvement, because you wouldn't be able to print an image that big unless you had probably over 35 megapixel camera. Well, you would, but it wouldn't look as detailed when you looked at it close up. And then you know when you look at those two things, it's easier to start to make decisions from the head. But then what happens is a new camera comes out, and camera manufacturers tease you, and I think I need that, and I usually fall foul of that.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm using the A7R III, and that's 42.2 megapixels.
Yeah.
And I have seen different big prints of my own photos, and I can hardly see the difference, as you mentioned, unless you're like putting your nose all the way up to it. But how often do you really do that? Like we love as photographers to pixel peep and geek out over, oh, look at those crispy details, but nobody cares. Besides us, nobody cares.
No, nobody cares.
Yeah.
No, and then the daft thing is that we upload them to Instagram, which is just ridiculous, isn't it? It doesn't matter what megapixels you've got. But if I think about my calendar, for instance, I don't think, oh, that was taken on a drone. I have drone photos in my calendar. My Fuji X-T2, my Fuji X-T3, my Fuji X-T20, which is like a really much cheaper Fuji camera, a kit camera, and then I've got my Nikon, Z7. So yeah, it's a funny relationship with gear, I think, because people will always buy new stuff because you always want the latest. But the fact is, if camera manufacturers didn't produce another camera, it wouldn't change the quality of photos, would it? And actually, what I really like is the simplicity of it, and just being able to. That's why I like my phone. When I'm trying to find a composition, I more often take my phone and try and find a composition, because I'm not then thinking about the camera and the buttons on the camera. I'm just looking at the nice screen on the back of the phone and just trying to find that composition. So yeah, but I think we'll always go back and spend more money on cameras.
Yeah.
So there'll always be a need for gear video channels, because everyone likes looking at new gear.
For some reason, yeah. It's I have to hide my composition tips and actually learning values behind gear related titles and thumbnails, and it's apparently what works, and it's, for me it's annoying. Like if I make a title on just composition in landscape photography with tips, people are just like looking at it, it's like, nah. But if I write like 16 to 35 millimeter on that thumbnail, people press it. And as a YouTuber, like, the only thing you can do is just accept that is how the world is if you want eyeballs on your video. But yeah, it's also a little bit annoying that you do have to use those, top 10 trending propaganda techniques to have people click your videos with titles and thumbnails and a theme. And yeah, for us YouTubers, you know what I'm talking about. We are not really that different from anyone who are making commercials for big blockbuster movies, or a journalist who have to make people click on the title of their news article.
Yeah.
Like, it's more or less the same.
Yeah. It is, and it frustrates me a little bit when people say don't do clickbait titles, but at the end of the day, if people don't click our videos, they don't get to see them. so certain titles do better than other titles, so we're bound to do that because that's what the YouTube algorithm promotes, which is right. I suppose it's the only way it can work. But yeah, it's an odd one, isn't it? That I don't quite understand why people would rather watch a video on a wide-angle lens than they would on how to improve your composition, because I know which one will make a bigger difference.
Exactly.
But there we go.
Yeah. All right. So I think we have talked for so long now. It's like 40 minutes or something like that. So I just wanna.
So that's pretty good.
wrap it up here and say thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. I hope the people who are still left watching or listening to this long video got some value from it, because these questions or themes we have talked about are something that I'm very passionate about, and I think is way more important than the sharpness of your latest or newest lens and camera. So thank you, Nigel, so much.
I think that's right. And
yeah, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say I think that's right, and it'd be interesting to hearing people in the comments below as well, just what people thought about, whether this was useful, and certainly about gear as well, and what they thought about different types of video. I'd be interested in hearing that.
Yeah, I'm also very curious to hear if this format is something that people enjoy. I have a list of photographers that I really want to talk to, and the talks will be more about this than specifically gear. We're not going to bash gear because we might also be techies and nerds, but it certainly, I want to take it a step further and just share some knowledge with different photographers, landscape photographers mainly, and how our different approaches are to photography, and how it works as an art for the most part. So Nigel, thank you so much for being the first.
Thanks ever so much for letting me be the first person.
Of the photographers who were part of this. And people, let me know down in the description whether or not this is something you would want more of. So thank you so much for watching, and until next time.